Hey everyone, welcome back to the next episode of the Ski Bum Surf Guide Central America. Today we're talking about the Dominical to Uvita area in Costa Rica. I guess this is technically qualified as the Northern Osa Peninsula, even though it's actually not out on the Osa Peninsula. It's a relatively, and I use that word loosely, relatively underdeveloped area still in Costa Rica. There's still quite, it's still Costa Rica. There's still quite a bit of tourist infrastructure. It's still super comfortable. There's still lots of really nice hotels. There's accommodations for every budget. It's easy to get to, just like almost all of Costa Rica. It's really it's an easy place to go on a surf trip. With that being said, it's probably the least developed mainstream surf area, Costa Rica, and this is really what makes it one of my favorite areas to visit for a surf trip. So here we have the map from San Jose. It's about 3.5 hours. You can get there several ways. You can rent a car and drive from San Jose. You can pay a private shuttle, or you can do a shared shuttle through a company like Graybus or Interbus or Gray Line or Tropical Tours. You can just search shared shuttle on Google, and you can find multiple companies offering that. But honestly, the best way and the cheapest way to get to Dominical is just to go to San Jose, land in San Jose, and go to the Alfaro or the Chilapa bus terminal and get a direct bus to Dominical. It'll cost you about $12 or $14. If you have surfboards, it'll cost you about another $10. So you'll spend about half to a third or even less, depending on what the shuttle companies are charging, to take the public bus. The public buses are air conditioned, they're comfortable, and they get to Dominical in the same time period. Just tell the bus driver, if it's not a direct bus, you can just tell the bus driver you need to get off in Dominical, and he'll let you know when it's time to get off. So next we're gonna move on to the surf spots. We're gonna get right into it. There's a ton of surf spots between Dominical and the south of Uvita. The most well-known is obviously Playa Dominical. Playa Dominical is a heavy beach break. It's known to be a board breaker. It works at all tides. It's really heavy at low tide, and it can be a little bit more playful and fun at mid and high tide. It has gnarly rip currents, and in my experience, it's highly seasonal. So what does this mean? What this means is the best time to go if you're looking for clean, lined up waves is probably the dry season. The dry season, you'll have an average daily conditions of 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 feet, and it'll be clean. There'll be barrels. There'll be smaller days that are more like beginner and intermediate friendly. The bigger days, of course, will be more for intermediate and advanced surfers. This is not necessarily a beginner surf spot. And it's highly dependent on the sandbars. It's fed by a large river that comes down from the mountains that pushes cold water, which also kind of affects the climate in Dominical. To me, it always seems a little cooler in Dominical, especially if you're staying by the river. One of the downsides of this region, though, is that it does not benefit from the Papagayo winds that the more northern provinces in Costa Rica have. That means onshores are more common in Dominical, but this is kind of offset by the fact that you can surf at all tides, and a lot of times the winds are lighter in Dominical, and on a daily basis it's surrounded by mountains, so the winds are kind of buffered by the mountains, and you can surf so a lot of days you can surf all day, especially if you're accustomed to surfing in light onshores, and it's the kind of spot that in light onshores, especially at low tide, it can still barrel. So the next area in the Dominical to Uvita region is going to be Dominicalito. There's a little village here with a great little waterfall. It's 200 meters outside the village. It's a great place to stay if you're a more beginner or intermediate surfer. This region actually has I would say, the opposite surf season as Dominical. If you're coming here, if you're an advanced surfer in Dominicalito, you want to come in the southwest, the heavier southwest swells, which will be the wet season. So that's going to be like May, June to like October. And I found that this area is one of the few areas in Costa Rica that still works during the height of the rainy season, when just like September and October, the winds are still relatively light here and you can still score relatively clean waves on the daily. I've actually left Nicaragua during September before and gone to Dominicalito because the conditions are sometimes better in September and especially October with the rains and the southwest swells. Once again, this is because Dominicalito and Dominical are surrounded by mountains that kind of buffer the wind. And yeah, Dominicalito itself is a pretty mellow, standard soft beach break. It only works at high tide. You can kind of surf there at mid-incoming, but it really just seems to get better with the high tide. There's a really good, if you're a beginner, it's like maybe the best beginner beach, even in all of Costa Rica. It's super consistent for beginners. As a beginner, you could surf here almost every day, even in the height of the wet season. When it gets bigger, there's an inside section that has a lot of white water. There's a surf school here. I'll post a link to it. It's run by a really cool guy named Ricardo and his wife, Cami. And it's called Todo Sano Surf School. You can find them on Facebook at Todo Sano Surf School. You can find them at their website, Todo Sano Surf School, CR. I'll post a link to it so you can see. I highly recommend this for a beginner. You can even go here as a beginner in the dry season, and it's a really good place to go. It's a really good place to surf as a beginner and really start to pick up surfing. Okay, in Dominicalito, we've got a third area to surf, or a second area to surf in Dominicalito, the third in Dominical, and it's going to be called Punta Dominicalito. It's about another kilometer and a half to the south from the Dominicalito village. You can go there when there's a bigger south swell. It's a left-hand point. Getting in and getting out is kind of funky. You have to kind of like scramble down this little hill and just jump in the water and paddle out. It's not like a beach. It's rocky. It's more intermediate to advanced. It's definitely not a beginner-friendly place. There's shallow rocks. But with that being said, I've surfed here with, no crowds. In fact, I've never seen it crowded. Usually, in fact, when it's working, it's just a few locals from the village in Dominicalito. And it's an amazing spot. It'll hold, 10 feet of swell. It works more like the mid-tide to the high tide, although I have seen a little wave out there at the lower tide. I guess it just depends on the swell direction. It definitely seems to like more like southwest swell, so you're not even going to get a wave here in the dry season. You're going to want to go here during a longer period southwest swell, and it's going to come in the wet season. Moving on down the coast as we get away from Dominical and we get closer to Uvita, there's a spot that's a really well-known surf spot in Uvita. It's probably the go-to Uvita surf spot. It works better in the wet season, but it does work sometimes in the dry season. It's a beautiful, almost undeveloped black sand beach. It's called Playa Hermosa. Don't confuse it with the other Playa Hermosa in the northern Punta Arenas province, or the Playa Hermosa in Guanacaste, or the Playa Hermosa in Nicaragua, or the Playa Hermosa on the Caribbean coast. This is Playa Hermosa de Uvita. It's a really mellow black sand beach just to the north of Uvita. It's where most people from Uvita go to surf on a daily basis. It's a great spot to go if you're a longboarder, but you can ride anything here. It's a fun break. To get there from Dominical, really all you have to do is go out and catch the bus in the morning and ride about 10-15 minutes down the road. Just tell the bus driver you want to get off at Playa Hermosa de Uvita, and he'll tell you where to get off, and you can just walk right to the beach and surf. It's a great place for just more mellow waves. It's not as mellow as Dominicalito, but that being said, it's still pretty mellow. It's a fun place to just go and surf with your friends or your family or your girlfriend or yourself if you're just looking for a more mellow, fun, relaxed time. Uvita itself is to the south of here. It has a pretty relaxed vibe. They're famous for like whale watching, and there's a national park here where they do whale tours in the South swell season. People dive here. It has a pretty big expat community, but with that being said, it's not as overrun as the northern parts of Costa Rica. It still has like a more local jungle feel. I highly recommend it. There's actually a beach break in Uvita. Yeah, it's the southern tip of the whale's tail. It's called Punta Uvita. It's a pretty inconsistent beach break. It needs a little bit more swell to work. South or southwest seems to be what works better here. I've really only surfed it, a couple of times, but it's just more fun, mellow, sandy beach break. A lot of times you'll surf here alone when it's actually working, because it doesn't work that much. And finally, to the south of Uvita, you've got a couple more mellow breaks known as Playa Ballena, which is a whale beach, and also Playa Ventanas. Both these beaches have small waves that are very suitable for beginners. It's another option in the area for more beginner surfers who just want to learn to catch their first waves. And you can kind of explore these at your own pleasure. I haven't really spent much time there, but I have heard that they're great for beginners. So yeah, that kind of wraps up our little guide to Dominical, to Uvita. There's lots of little fun waves. It works, wet season, dry season. It works all seasons, although certain beaches have their seasons that they prefer. If you're going to go to Dominical during the wet season, I highly recommend that you be an advanced surfer. And if you're going to go during the dry season, it's definitely more friendly to beginners when small, and intermediates and advanced surfers when it has a little bit more swell. So yeah, I hope everyone's enjoying the Ski Bum Surf Guide. I got more guides coming. We're getting a lot more followers on our channel. If you're liking the content, please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Hit the notification bell if you're really liking it. We got a lot more content to come over the next few months. And I hope everyone's having a good day. Keep it positive. Have a good time. And yeah, Pura Vida.